So very interestingly, I'm bringing in a perspective from the Asia Pacific side, where we have the haves and the have-nots. So I felt this was very critical because if we are going to be an international society, we will have to think about all those people who don't have many of these resources. So I'd like to bring your attention to this very briefly. We talk about the region. It's a vast region. And then what are the stewardship initiatives in the high-income countries? And about all the rest who are the low and middle income countries as per the UN classification. And then there is something that nobody talks about. Not only fair, but there are also care principles that we need to be very aware of when we deal with indigenous data. And then some initiatives are underway. This is no way a comprehensive talk that I'm providing. It's just an overview. And this is just, of course, done yesterday. So I only gathered together what I could, and many initiatives are happening in many places that we may or may not be aware of. So what is the APAC region? It comprises 51 countries and 7 territories at least, and roughly home to 4.7 billion people, 60% of the world's population, of which we have 3,000 indigenous groups. And this represents about 60% of the global indigenous population. So you have a little figure there on the right, which gives you the whole region. We exclude Russia because the capital is in Europe, and therefore it's everything other than Russia, and spans all the way from West Asia to New Zealand. So we have a very big territory to deal with, and we have a significant presence in the global supercomputing landscape, with China and Japan leading the way. And they have a number of important installations which are actually in the top 10 or top 100 lists. And they perform really well, but what about the rest? And all those little dots you see are where we have been for conferences from 2002. And our next conference is going to be in India, again, an LMIC. So I just wanted you to know, because you already heard about this in your newsletter. Okay, we are not pitching for the conference. We are already overbooked. What about stewardship initiatives in the high-income countries? How many are there? Only 5, okay? And these are in alphabetical order. Australia, Japan, Korea, New Zealand, and Singapore. And these are all their current HPC installations, the best of the best. So I'm not given all the pictures, some of them. Fugaku's in Japan is doing really well. Fugaku is another name for Mount Fuji, so that's how they got the name. It's the pinnacle of their success, and it's been doing really well over the past 11 years. So what about the LMICs? And there are a whole lot of them if you've done your math. 51 minus 5, that many countries. We have a few examples here. We have on the lower level, China's Tianhe 3. Obviously, they have Tianhe 1. They also have Tianhe 3. It is also believed that they have actually made all the GPU chips themselves, and they do not need to buy from NVIDIA because of the terrifying tariffs currently on. Okay, Thailand's Lanta is one of the biggest supercomputers in that area, but I'll tell you what the problems are with this supercomputer in the next slide. India has its own Param supercomputer, and that is part of the next talk to be given by Dr. Deepak Nair, so stay tuned, and he will be able to present all the other resources as well. So what we have is this digital divide as usual. Of course, I had to grab a picture that was free from Google. So if you know the books, but you don't have anything on this side and you have lots on the other side, and how on earth are we going to bridge the gap? The challenges here, according to me, this is not to everybody else, are something that you may or may not know, but we have very poor network connectivity. Even within Thailand, this supercomputer is based in a place where there are no other national institutes. So the institutes and the universities there have real problem in sending data and jobs to the supercomputer. So that's one of the issues. We have what is called APAN, Asia Pacific Advanced Network, which has been on the scene for about 25 years, trying to fix this problem and get connectivity. And we have the ASEAN initiatives as well, telegeography for laying down all those undersea cables, which hopefully won't get trawled on by big ships. But they are there, and there are other initiatives. So we are looking into all this. But we are working in a concerted way to bring the benefits of advances, including AI, to simple things like public health. And I'm also part of the WHO's Western Pacific team on genomic health, and I'm the only bioinformatician there. So hard luck. Okay. So access to reliable power and water supply. Many of the systems, including those in Singapore, are all water cooled. So they don't need air conditioning. Singapore, 1 degree north, equator, actually does not use any power to cool their computers. They are on the top level of a multi-story building, and they are water cooled. So we are actually trying to not leave a big carbon footprint, but still you need reliable power and water supply, and with controls on everything, including nuclear power for even developing countries. It's going to be a real ask in the future. So we need to actually think about these things on a global basis. So increasing prices of hardware and now import tariffs and bans, especially on NVIDIA chips, are going to make life really difficult for these countries, which have very limited budgets. They always have to pay in US dollars. And how on earth are they going to come up with these big numbers? By the way, WHO has actually pared down all its work because they don't have any funding. Half the people have been fired. Okay, so we need a skilled workforce as well, which can actually run these centers, maintain them, archive the data, do backups, as well as help users to run their software, install them, and scientists who will benefit from this, as well as public health systems that can leverage on all these initiatives. So the biggest challenge here is we have indigenous data. It's like the elephant in the room. And those of you who have very good eyesight will note it's not the African elephant, it's the Asian version. Thank you. So there's something to worry about when you have indigenous data. It's not that they are tough to work with. Janet said that it's very difficult to work with indigenous groups. It's not that they are tough to work with. They are inherently scared of what the so-called invaders would do to their data. Okay, so everybody knows about FAIR principles. It came about from 2014 to 2016 when the final thing was published as the FAIR. And FAIR does not only cover data, it covers metadata as well as infrastructure, which is not something that everybody knows about. They only talk about fair use of data. It also covers everything else that has to do with machines that acquire the data and store them. Okay, so FAIR is findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable, or ISCB has a big note on this. Everybody seems to have a note on this. But what people don't understand is what is indigenous data? And why does it need more protection? We have not only the individuals in the middle who want to have control of how their data is acquired, stored, provided to other services, and managed. What happens when a person dies? Should their data be there or not? Because for them, it's very important to think about their ancestors in a great way. Okay, then we have non-human things. Everything that pertains to an indigenous community is considered indigenous data. The land, the water, the geology, their titles, air, soil, everything, sacred ecosystems, plants, animals they worship, their totems, they are all important. And then we have the collectives, the cultural things, the language. When you have an indigenous, say, medicinal knowledge database, we also had recordings of the elders speaking in their own languages, native languages, providing that to their community and for their future generations to look at and understand. So that also forms part of this indigenous data. So everything needs to be worried about. So the CARE principles talk about collective benefit. authority to control. They want to be equal partners and not give it off for free for ChatGPT to learn on it. Okay, responsibility and ethics. These are the other things. I have big slides on these things, but I won't bore you to death. Okay, they all come with lots of subdivisions and subcategories, but at least these are the minimum. And you will note this is actually a Maori symbol from New Zealand. Okay. Fair and care are complementary, they work together. And care specifically addresses what the indigenous people hold dear to their heart. Their blood is their inheritance. So they are scared to give it away because they think it's the property of their community. So should they give their blood for DNA testing or not? Of course, they do have illnesses that are well characterized in various groups. In Australia, it is usually diabetes and liver issues and other things that we know that they seem to suffer from these issues. But how does the government or the health authority try to induce them to give the data that's being worked on? And that comes from the principles of open science. For instance, if we could incorporate the collective benefit, where they would have a say in how the data is stored, managed, accessed, who will have access to them, that would provide improved governance and citizenship engagement. So we can be fair and care. And that's the motto of this whole business. There are very nice images and things, but I'm not going to give that to you. Very importantly, we need to have fair compliance and openness, which is suitable for care, which must be that all fair data to be open, but how much should be open? We could just have the metadata open, keep the data restricted, and, sorry, I've gone ahead. The accessible data will be only by approval, so that we know who's taking the data and how they are using it. So that's to prevent misuse. And this is one of the ways by which the database or the data set can be fair, but only metadata is openly accessible and usually randomized, so people can't figure out who it pertains to. Possible workflows are there, the papers there, I will leave you to work it out. It is possible to develop this kind of system, and this will also have to be under cooperation of many government agencies, because ethnic communities span different geographic and political locations. So some initiatives are underway, and we have APAN, Asia Pacific Research Platform, APRF, which has been set up. A test case has been set up in UPM, Malaysia, by a person I know for over 30 years, Suhaimi Napis. He's the one who's running this show. Open to working group members, Pakistan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Thailand. Many of these countries, several of these, do not have high-powered computing systems. They do not have the infrastructure. They do not have the scientists. So they are trying to get there. So this is a very good idea to build from the grassroots level. And they will share computing resources with Korea, Australia, Japan, Singapore, who are all part of APAN and have agreed to provide extra computational time free of charge to many of these communities. So the A3 Foresight Plan actually provides a way by which the high-powered computing systems in China, Japan, and Korea can collaborate and form an open science platform, which can then be made accessible to countries who are members of the Asia Pacific Plan, or even to ASEAN. ASEAN is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. It is 10 countries. Most of them are LMICs. So I think only Singapore is on the top of the list. I'm getting there, thank you. But what I would like to ask, in the famous words of the Beatles, or should it be, let it be, or should it be, we can make it work? We can work it out. So, time for questions if there is any time, otherwise we can move on.
There is time for a few questions.
I'm currently based in the Philippines, which is one of the LMICs in the ASEAN region. And my observation over the years, or maybe decades by now, is that there seems to be this kind of tension. On the one hand, there's this, like you said, a lot of it is probably based on big trust issues or related to trust issues. So I'm wondering what kinds of steps can we, take, maybe in small and subtle ways, but like just across the board to somehow de-escalate or diffuse that tension.
So in the context of genomic medicine, WHO has actually published a report in Lancet Regional Health or whatever. I can send you the paper reference. So we actually put together a system by which we can encourage people to follow. These are only guidelines. And in the end, every country has its own regulations, and the health department and the legal departments and the politics of that moment will determine what happens. So we don't get into that, but we have general guidelines for everybody so they can share and collaborate. This has also happened because many of the populations are spread across so many different countries. If somebody wants a bone marrow transplant, if they require an organ transplant, it's practically impossible to find unless you can actually search through all those countries. So we are looking at health at many levels. So genomic health is only one of them, and they are focused on rare diseases, which occur in specific populations. So it's possible. Ethics guidelines are being put together, and if you would like to be part of the team, and depending on your country, you will be pointed to the set of people who are working on these things. Thank you. So everybody has understood everything, or is it going to be like you're thinking about what to do, or you are totally unaware of the rest of the world, which is also possible. So we live in our own silos, and we are so busy doing our KPIs that we forget the other part exists or doesn't exist. By the way, Jordan has a synchrotron, if you didn't know. So those are the new initiatives that are happening in many parts of the world, unless it gets bombed, of course.
So, thank you so much.